The drone appeared on radar at 3:47 hours, moving at impossible speeds through restricted airspace above Naval Air Station Fallen. Lieutenant Commander Zara Ghost Volkov stood in the control tower, watching the blip dance across the screen like a firefly in a thunderstorm. The SEAL Team's 6 operators crowded around the monitor, their weathered faces illuminated by the green glow of the display. "What the hell is that thing doing up there?" muttered Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, his voice carrying the gravelly tone of a man who'd seen too many missions go sideways. The drone's trajectory defied conventional flight patterns, weaving between mountain peaks with precision that made even seasoned operators uncomfortable. Ghost studied the readout, her pale blue eyes tracking the anomaly's erratic movements. At 32, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd earned every scar, every commendation, every moment of respect in a world that had initially dismissed her as another diversity hire. Her call sign had been earned not through bravado, but through an uncanny ability to appear where enemies least expected her. The laughter started when she reached for her service weapon. "You planning to shoot down a drone with a sidearm, Volkov?" Sergeant First Class Thompson chuckled, his teammates joining in with the kind of masculine camaraderie that excluded as much as it included. They'd heard the stories about her marksmanship scores, but stories were just stories until proven in the field. The drone banked sharply left, its metallic surface catching moonlight as it descended toward the flight line where millions of dollars in naval aircraft sat exposed. Ghost's hand found the grip of her M17 muscle memory, guiding her movements as she calculated wind speed, trajectory, and the impossible mathematics of hitting a moving target at 300 meters. "Stand down, Lieutenant Commander," came the voice from the radio. "We have F-18 scrambling to intercept." But Ghost was already moving, her boots silent on the tower's metal stairs as she descended toward the observation deck. The SEAL operators followed, their amusement turning to curiosity as they watched her position herself against the railing. The drone had dropped to 200 meters, still weaving its hypnotic pattern through the Nevada sky. She drew her weapon in one fluid motion, the M17's weight familiar in her hands. The laughter died as the SEALs recognized something in her stance, something that spoke of countless hours on the range, of competitions won and records broken. The drone banked again, presenting a split-second opportunity that would require timing beyond human capability. Ghost exhaled slowly, her finger finding the trigger as the world around her faded to silence. In that moment, she wasn't the pilot they'd dismissed or the officer they'd underestimated. She was exactly what her call sign promised, a ghost, haunting the space between impossible and inevitable. The shot echoed across the desert like thunder, and everything changed. The M17's report shattered the pre-dawn silence, sending a shockwave through the observation deck that seemed to freeze time itself. For a heartbeat, the drone continued its erratic dance, and Ghost felt the familiar weight of doubt that accompanied every impossible shot. Then, with a shower of sparks visible even from their elevated position, the aircraft tumbled from the sky like a broken bird. The SEAL operators stood in stunned silence, watching debris scatter across the tarmac below. Chief Rodriguez lowered his binoculars slowly, his weathered face reflecting something between disbelief and newfound respect. "Holy shit," he whispered, the words carrying more weight than any congratulation. Ghost holstered her weapon with practiced efficiency, her expression unchanged despite the magnitude of what had just occurred. She'd learned long ago that celebrating victories only gave doubters ammunition to claim luck over skill. The radio crackled to life, multiple voices overlapping as base security and flight operations tried to process what had happened. "Control, this is Tower 7. Target neutralized. Repeat, aerial threat has been eliminated." The response came immediately. "Tower 7, confirm method of neutralization." Ghost keyed the radio, her voice steady as granite. "Single shot, small arms fire." Static filled the airwaves for several seconds before the controller responded. Tower 7, please repeat your last transmission. Before Ghost could answer, Sergeant Thompson stepped forward, his earlier mockery replaced by something approaching awe. Control, this is SEAL Team 6 Actual. Can confirm Lieutenant Commander Volkov engaged and destroyed the aerial target with a single pistol round at approximately 200 meters. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Ghost watched the crash site below, where emergency vehicles were already converging on the scattered debris. She'd taken difficult shots before, threading bullets through impossibly small windows of opportunity, but this felt different. This felt like a turning point. Rodriguez approached her slowly, extending his hand. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. We all do." His handshake was firm, carrying the weight of professional acknowledgement. "That was the finest piece of shooting I've seen in 23 years of service." Ghost accepted the gesture with a slight nod. "It was necessary," she replied simply, though her eyes held depths that suggested the shot meant more than she was willing to admit. In a career filled with moments where she'd had to prove herself again and again, this felt like validation written in gunpowder and trajectory. The other SEALs gathered around, their earlier skepticism transformed into genuine curiosity about the woman who just accomplished what should have been impossible. Ghost found herself studying their faces, recognizing the shift that occurred when respect replaced assumption, when capability superseded prejudice. As dawn began to paint the Nevada sky in shades of amber and rose, Ghost knew that everything had changed in the space of a single trigger pull. The investigation began before the sun fully cleared the Sierra Nevada mountains. Ghost sat in the briefing room at 800 hours, her dress uniform crisp despite having been awake for 26 hours straight. Across the polished conference table, Rear Admiral Catherine Hayes leaned forward, her steel-gray eyes reflecting both concern and curiosity. "Lieutenant Commander, walk me through the engagement one more time," Hayes requested, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded respect in rooms where women were often unwelcome. The Admiral's presence lent gravity to proceedings that could easily have devolved into bureaucratic theater. Ghost's recounting was precise, clinical in its attention to detail. She described wind conditions, estimated target speed, firing stance, and sight picture with the mechanical precision of someone accustomed to having every decision scrutinized. Around the table, intelligence officers scribbled notes while audio-visual specialists reviewed footage from the tower's security cameras. The drone's wreckage told its own story. Preliminary analysis revealed sophisticated Chinese manufacturing, stealth capabilities that should have made it invisible to conventional radar, and a payload bay that remained mysteriously empty. Most disturbing was the flight computer's complete lack of identifiable command signals. The drone had operated with autonomous intelligence that pushed the boundaries of known technology. "The shot trajectory is confirmed," announced Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, the ballistics expert whose weathered hands had examined crime scenes from Kandahar to Kiev. "Single 9-round, center mass on the primary rotor assembly. Given the target's speed and erratic movement pattern, the probability of success was approximately 0.003%. Ghost felt the weight of those numbers settle around the table like fog. She'd known the shot was difficult, but seeing it reduced to mathematics made the accomplishment feel both more and less significant. In her mind, she could still see the drone's brief pause in its chaotic dance, the split-second window that had opened like a door between worlds. Admiral Hayes studied the tactical display showing the engagement from multiple angles. "Commander Volkov, your personnel file indicates exceptional marksmanship scores, but nothing approaching this level of capability. How do you explain the discrepancy?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a discharged weapon. Ghost chose her words carefully, knowing that her answer would shape not only her career but potentially influence doctrine for years to come. "Ma'am," Range scores measure precision under controlled conditions. Combat effectiveness requires adaptation to variables that can't be replicated in training. It was a diplomatic response that revealed nothing while suggesting everything. Ghost had learned to speak in measured tones when explaining capabilities that others found difficult to accept. The truth was more complex than any after-action report could capture. She'd felt the shot before taking it, understanding in some primal way exactly when and where to fire. Admiral Hayes nodded slowly, recognizing the careful balance between confidence and humility in Ghost's response. Around the table, the assembled officers began to understand they were witnessing something unprecedented, a moment when individual capability transcended institutional expectations. The briefing room's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Ghost waited for the next question, knowing that her future hung in the balance. The classified folders arrived that afternoon, their red stripping indicating clearance levels that made even seasoned intelligence officers uncomfortable. Ghost found herself in secure conference room Alpha, surrounded by faces she didn't recognize and ranks that commanded immediate attention. The air conditioning hummed with mechanical precision, creating an atmosphere of sterile urgency. "What you're about to hear doesn't leave this room," began Colonel Sarah Reeves, her voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to handling information that could reshape global politics. The intelligence officer's fingers drummed against the table as she opened the first folder, revealing photographs that made Ghost's blood run cold. Satellite imagery showed drone formations over the South China Sea, mechanical swarms moving with coordination that suggested hive intelligence. The craft matched the specifications of the one Ghost had destroyed, but seeing them in formation transformed individual threat into systematic nightmare. Each photograph was time-stamped within the last 72 hours. "Your engagement wasn't random," Colonel Reeves continued, her presentation methodical and devastating. "That drone was conducting reconnaissance of our most sensitive installations. Its flight pattern took it over nuclear storage facilities, classified aircraft development hangars, and communication arrays that coordinate Pacific Fleet operations." Ghost studied the intelligence photos, her tactical mind automatically calculating angles of approach, defensive positions, and vulnerability assessments. The drone she'd shot hadn't been lost or malfunctioning. It had been gathering intelligence with surgical precision, mapping weaknesses in America's most protected assets. "The Chinese are calling it a navigation error," added Captain Rodriguez from Naval Intelligence, his tone suggesting exactly what he thought of that explanation. "They've requested return of the wreckage through diplomatic channels, claiming the aircraft contained proprietary commercial technology." Admiral Hayes leaned back in her chair, her expression grim. "Which brings us to why you're here, Commander. That shot you took wasn't just exceptional marksmanship. It was a strategic victory that prevented significant intelligence compromise. The question now is whether we can replicate your success." The words hung in the air like a challenge issued across generations of military tradition. Ghost understood immediately that her career was about to change direction, moving from routine patrols and training exercises toward something far more consequential. She'd spent years proving herself worthy of respect. Now she was being asked to prove herself worthy of secrets. "Ma'am, I'm prepared for whatever mission you deem appropriate," Ghost responded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was being discussed. Around the table, she could see the careful calculation in every face, officers weighing risk against capability, tradition against necessity. Colonel Reeves slid another folder across the table, this one bearing classifications that Ghost had never seen before. "Commander, how familiar are you with asymmetric warfare doctrine?" Ghost opened the folder slowly, knowing that her answer would determine whether she spent the rest of her career flying routine missions or operating in the shadows where wars were won and lost before the first shot was fired. The photographs inside, made her breath catch in her throat. The images revealed a network of installations stretching from Alaska to Guam, each one representing a critical node in America's Pacific defense strategy. Ghost studied the aerial reconnaissance photos, her pilot's eye automatically noting flight paths, radar coverage, and defensive vulnerabilities that the Chinese drones had been systematically mapping. Operation Silent Sky, Colonel Reeves announced, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. For the past 6 months, we've been tracking increasing drone incursions across 17 different installations. They're building a comprehensive intelligence picture of our entire Pacific defense posture. The scope of the operation made Ghost's pulse quicken. This wasn't random probing or opportunistic surveillance. It was systematic preparation for something much larger. Each photograph represented hours of careful observation, thousands of data points being assembled into a picture that could reshape the balance of power in the Pacific. Admiral Hayes stood and moved to the wall-mounted display, activating a map that showed drone incursion patterns over the past half-year. Red dots marked confirmed sightings, while orange indicators showed suspected but unconfirmed contacts. The pattern that emerged was chilling in its thoroughness. Traditional intercept methods have proven ineffective, the Admiral continued, her presentation clinical despite the gravity of the subject matter. These drones are too small for conventional missiles, too fast for most small arms, and too sophisticated for electronic warfare countermeasures. Until yesterday, we had no reliable method of stopping them. Ghost felt the weight of implication settling around her shoulders like a lead blanket. Her impossible shot hadn't been a fluke or a moment of exceptional luck. It represented a capability that military planners desperately needed. The mathematics of warfare were shifting, and she'd accidentally proven that human skill could still triumph over technological superiority. The Joint Chiefs have authorized formation of a specialized response team, Colonel Reeves added, sliding yet another classified folder across the table. Small unit, exceptional personnel, unconventional methods. You'd be the primary tactical element. Ghost opened this folder more slowly, finding personnel files for individuals whose redacted backgrounds suggested capabilities that existed outside normal military structures. Combat photographers who'd never held cameras, communications specialists with sniper qualifications, logistics officers with classified language certifications, a collection of people whose official duties barely hinted at their actual skills. "Ma'am, what exactly would my role be?" Ghost asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Admiral Hayes returned to her seat, her expression grave. "Commander, you be tasked with developing and implementing kinetic solutions to aerial surveillance threats that conventional forces cannot address. Simply put, you'd be hunting drones with methods that don't officially exist." The room fell silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of aircraft operations outside. Ghost understood that she was being offered something unprecedented, the chance to operate outside normal chains of command, pursuing objectives that would never appear in official reports. "What's the timeline?" she asked quietly. "Immediate deployment," came the response that would change everything. The C-130 Hercules lifted off from Fallen at 21:47 hours, its cargo bay filled with equipment that bore no identifying markings or serial numbers. Ghost sat in the web seating alongside her hastily assembled team, studying personnel files by the dim red lighting that preserved night vision. Outside the aircraft's small windows, the Nevada desert passed beneath them like an ocean of shadow. Her team consisted of individuals whose backgrounds read like fiction. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, officially a combat photographer, whose portfolio included images from conflicts that had never been publicly acknowledged. Petty Officer First Class David Kim, listed as a communications technician, whose service record showed deployments to locations that didn't appear on standard maps. Chief Warrant Officer James Parker, designated as a logistics specialist, whose language qualifications included dialects spoken only in regions where America had no official presence. "First target is Kadena Air Base," Santos announced, her voice barely audible over the aircraft's engine noise. She handed Ghost a tactical folder containing reconnaissance photos that showed drone activity patterns over the Okinawan installation. "Intelligence indicates regular overflights, approximately every 72 hours. Ghost studied the photographs, her tactical mind automatically calculating firing positions, wind patterns, and escape routes. Kadena presented unique challenges: heavily populated surrounding areas, dense commercial air traffic, and political sensitivities that made any engagement potentially international in scope. "Rules of engagement?" she asked, though she suspected the answer would be intentionally vague. Chief Parker leaned forward, his weathered face serious in the red lighting. "Minimize collateral damage, maintain plausible deniability, and ensure no evidence remains for post-incident analysis. Beyond that, you have tactical discretion." The words carried weight that extended far beyond their simple meaning. Ghost was being given authority to engage threats using methods that couldn't be officially acknowledged, in locations where failure could trigger diplomatic crises or worse. It was the kind of responsibility that ended careers as often as it made them. Kim activated a tablet displaying real-time intelligence feeds from Pacific Command. Latest satellite imagery shows increased drone activity across multiple installations. They're accelerating their reconnaissance schedule. Ghost absorbed the information, understanding that time was becoming a critical factor. Whatever the Chinese were planning, their preparation phase was entering its final stages. The systematic intelligence gathering would soon give way to something more kinetic, more decisive. The aircraft banked slowly to the left, beginning its approach to the first refueling stop on a journey that would take them across the Pacific. Ghost closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of responsibility settling into her bones like fatigue after a long mission. When she opened them again, Santos was watching her with curiosity. "Ma'am, mind if I ask how you made that shot in Nevada?" Ghost considered the question, knowing that her answer would shape how her team perceived her capabilities. "I saw the pattern," she replied simply, offering truth without elaboration. Outside the aircraft, stars wheeled overhead like distant sentinels, bearing witness to a mission that would never appear in official histories. Kadena Air Base sprawled across southern Okinawa like a concrete testament to American power projection, its runways capable of handling everything from fighter jets to strategic bombers. Ghost stood on the observation platform of Tower Delta at 4:30 hours, watching the pre-dawn darkness for movement that shouldn't exist. The humid Okinawan air carried the scent of ocean salt, and jet fuel, familiar smells that reminded her why she'd chosen a life measured in flight hours and tactical decisions. Her team had dispersed across the base perimeter, each member positioned to provide overwatch and early warning for the engagement they all knew was coming. Intelligence predicted the next drone incursion within the following 6 hours, based on patterns established over months of careful observation. "Ghost, this is Overwatch 1, came Santos's voice through the encrypted radio, her tone professionally neutral despite the unconventional nature of their mission. "Negative contact on the eastern approach. Commercial air traffic is normal for this time period." Ghost acknowledged the report while maintaining her vigil toward the northwest, where satellite intelligence suggested the most likely approach vector. Her M17 felt different in this environment, heavier somehow, weighted with expectations that extended far beyond individual marksmanship. She'd spent the previous day familiarizing herself with local wind patterns, background noise levels, and the unique challenges of engaging targets over populated areas. The political implications made every calculation more complex. One misplaced round could spark an international incident, turning a covert operation into front-page news that would reverberate through diplomatic channels for decades. Ghost had practiced her shooting in environments where mistakes meant mission failure. Now, she operated where mistakes could mean war. Overwatch 2, Negative Contact Southern Sector, reported Kim, his voice carrying the calm professionalism of someone accustomed to missions that didn't officially exist. Local radar shows normal traffic patterns. Chief Parker's position provided coverage of the main flight line, where billions of dollars in advanced aircraft sat exposed to whatever surveillance the Chinese drones were conducting. His report came through with typical economy. Overwatch 3, all quiet. Ghost checked her chronometer, 4:47 hours. If intelligence predictions proved accurate, contact would occur within the next 90 minutes. She'd learned to trust the quiet moments before action, using them to center herself mentally and physically for what was coming. The radio crackled with a different voice. Base air traffic control, their transmission intended for an incoming C-130 transport. Ghost listened to the routine exchange, noting how normal operations continued around their shadow mission. The contrast reminded her that most people lived their lives unaware of the deadly chess games played in the margins of official policy. A sound made her turn, footsteps on the tower stairs, carefully measured and familiar. Santos appeared at the platform entrance, her camera equipment serving as perfect cover for her actual mission. "Ma'am, thought you should see this," Santos said quietly, handing Ghost a tablet displaying real-time satellite imagery. Intel just updated the threat assessment. The image showed multiple contacts approaching from 3 different vectors, their formation suggesting coordination that transformed individual surveillance into something resembling preparation for attack. The satellite feed revealed a pattern that made Ghost's tactical instincts scream warnings into the humid Okinawan dawn. 3 separate drone formations, approaching from vectors that suggested they'd studied Kadina's defensive posture with uncomfortable thoroughness. Each group maintained spacing that would require multiple engagement positions to counter effectively. "How many total contacts?" Ghost asked, her voice steady despite the implications spreading across the tablet's screen like digital cancer. 12 confirmed, possibly more behind the radar horizon, Santos replied, adjusting her position to provide better observation of the Western approach. "Intelligence is calling it unprecedented coordination." Ghost studied the tactical display, her mind automatically calculating engagement sequences, ammunition requirements, and the probability of successfully engaging multiple targets before they completed their reconnaissance mission. The mathematics were daunting even under ideal conditions, but the political constraints made success seem almost impossible. "Ghost, this is Overwatch 2, Kim's voice carried new urgency. "I've got visual contact bearing 270 approximately 5 kilometers out. Single contact, low altitude." The radio traffic intensified as her team confirmed multiple sightings across the base perimeter. Ghost tracked the incoming threats on her tablet while positioning herself for the first engagement, understanding that the next few minutes would determine whether their mission succeeded or failed spectacularly. "All Overwatch elements, this is Ghost," she transmitted, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone trained to make life-and-death decisions under pressure. "Weapons free, engage targets of opportunity, maintain noise discipline and avoid collateral damage." The first drone appeared as a dark speck against the lightning sky, its flight pattern erratic enough to make tracking difficult. Ghost raised her M17, feeling the familiar weight settle into her hands as she began the mental calculations that would determine trajectory and timing. Wind speed, 7 knots from the northeast. Target speed, estimated 40 meters per second. Range, approximately 300 meters and closing. Background, empty sky over unpopulated ocean. The drone banked left, presenting a brief profile that offered the best engagement opportunity she was likely to get. Ghost's breathing slowed as her finger found the trigger, the world around her fading to the narrow focus that accompanied precision shooting under pressure. The shot broke like thunder across the dawn silence, sending a shockwave through the humid air that seemed to wake the entire base. Ghost watched the drone tumble from the sky, its reconnaissance mission ending in a shower of sparks over the East China Sea. "Contact down," she reported, already tracking toward the next target visible on the horizon. But her satisfaction was short-lived. The remaining drones had reacted to her engagement with tactical sophistication that suggested artificial intelligence far more advanced than intelligence estimates had indicated. They'd scattered into evasive patterns that made engagement exponentially more difficult. "Overwatch 3, I've got 2 contacts moving fast over the flight line," Parker reported, his voice tight with concentration. "They're mapping our defensive positions." Ghost realized with growing alarm that they weren't just hunting surveillance drones. They were engaged with reconnaissance platforms that were hunting them back. The drones' evasive maneuvers displayed tactical awareness that transformed the engagement from hunting expedition to deadly chess match. Ghost tracked the nearest target through her sights, watching it weave between radio towers and maintenance buildings with precision that suggested real-time analysis of her firing position. "They're learning," she muttered into her radio, the implications chilling despite the tropical warmth. "These things are adapting to our engagement patterns." Santos's position provided overwatch of the eastern perimeter, where 2 drones had begun what appeared to be a coordinated reconnaissance of the base's most sensitive areas. Her voice carried professional concern as she reported their movement. "Overwatch 1, contacts are focusing on the nuclear storage area. Repeat, they're specifically targeting classified facilities." The intelligence implications were staggering. These weren't random surveillance platforms. They were conducting target assessment for something far more sinister. Ghost felt the weight of responsibility shift from protecting military secrets to preventing what could be preparation for an actual attack. "Overwatch 2, I need immediate suppression of the northern contact," Ghost transmitted, her tactical mind calculating engagement sequences while tracking her current target. "It's getting too close to the command center." Kim's response came immediately. "Roger, engaging now." The sound of his rifle echoed across the base, followed by the distinctive crash of a drone impacting concrete. But the remaining platforms had used the distraction to advance their positions, moving closer to installations that contained information worth starting wars over. Ghost's target suddenly changed direction, diving toward the flight line where a formation of F-22 Raptors sat exposed on the tarmac. The aircraft represented hundreds of millions of dollars in advanced technology, their stealth capabilities among America's most closely guarded secrets. She fired 3 times in rapid succession, her shots tracking the drone's unpredictable movement pattern. The second round found its mark, sending the platform cartwheeling into the ocean beyond the runway threshold. But even as it fell, Ghost could see another contact approaching from the southwest, its flight path suggesting it had been waiting for exactly this opportunity. "Contact elimination confirmed," Parker reported from his position near the fuel depot. "But we've got a problem. These things are transmitting data in real time. Even the ones we're shooting down are completing their intelligence gathering." The revelation hit Ghost like a physical blow. They weren't just failing to protect sensitive information. They were providing the enemy with detailed observations of American defensive capabilities, shot placement accuracy, and response timing. Every successful engagement was simultaneously a tactical victory and a strategic defeat. "All Overwatch elements switch to harassment fire," Ghost ordered, her voice reflecting the grim calculation that sometimes survival mattered more than mission success. "Make them work for their intelligence." As dawn broke fully over Kadena Air Base, Ghost understood that they were fighting the future itself, and losing. The after-action review took place in a conference room that didn't officially exist, buried 3 levels beneath Kadena's main operations center. Ghost sat across from Colonel Reeves, whose expression had evolved from professional concern to something approaching alarm. The tactical display showed drone flight paths overlaid with engagement data, creating a picture that confirmed everyone's worst fears. 17 confirmed contacts over a 4-hour period, Colonel Reeves announced, her voice carrying the weight of someone delivering news that would reshape military doctrine. Your team eliminated 6 targets, but the remainder completed comprehensive reconnaissance of our most sensitive installations. Ghost studied the flight path data, noting how the surviving drones had coordinated their movements to maximize intelligence gathering while minimizing exposure to ground fire. Their artificial intelligence had learned from each engagement, adapting tactics in real time with a sophistication that suggested years of development. "Ma'am, what's the damage assessment?" Ghost asked, though she suspected the answer would justify her growing sense of unease. Lieutenant Colonel Webb, the ballistics expert who'd analyzed her impossible shot in Nevada, leaned forward with data that made the room's temperature seem to drop several degrees. They mapped our entire nuclear storage protocol, documented F-22 maintenance schedules, and recorded detailed imagery of classified communication arrays. Essentially, they accomplished in 4 hours what traditional espionage would require years to achieve. The implications rippled through the room like shockwaves from a distant explosion. Ghost understood that her team's partial success had been negated by intelligence losses that could compromise American security for decades. The enemy hadn't just observed their facilities, they'd studied American defensive responses under operational conditions. Santos, reviewing footage from her position cameras, added details that darkened the picture further. Analysis of the engagement footage shows the drones were specifically targeting our response patterns. They sacrificed 6 platforms to gather detailed data on human reaction times, weapon capabilities, and tactical deployment. Chief Parker's weathered face reflected decades of experience with missions that didn't go according to plan. "Ma'am, respectfully, we're fighting an enemy that treats individual platforms as expendable intelligence-gathering opportunities. Traditional tactics aren't adequate for this threat." Ghost felt the weight of professional failure settling around her shoulders like lead. She'd achieved impossible marksmanship under extreme conditions, but the mission's strategic objectives had been compromised by an enemy that operated with patience and sophistication beyond human capability. Colonel Reeves activated another display, showing global drone incursion data that painted a picture of systematic intelligence gathering across multiple continents. This isn't limited to Pacific installations. Similar reconnaissance patterns have been detected over European NATO bases, strategic installations in the Middle East, and critical infrastructure across the continental United States. The scope of the operation made Ghost's breath catch. This wasn't preparation for regional conflict, it was preparation for global war, conducted with mechanical precision that suggested planning measured in years rather than months. "What are our orders?" Ghost asked quietly, knowing that her team's next mission would determine whether they were fighting a losing battle or finding new ways to win an impossible war. The encrypted communication from Washington arrived at 1347 hours, its classification level requiring a secure facility that existed in the theoretical space between official acknowledgement and plausible denial. Ghost found herself in a room that mapped the future of American defense strategy, surrounded by officials whose names would never appear in congressional testimony or public records. General Patricia Morrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, appeared on the secure video link with an expression that suggested she'd been awake for considerably longer than military regulations recommended. Her presence transformed the briefing from tactical discussion to strategic imperative, elevating Ghost's small team to the center of decisions that would reshape global military doctrine. Commander Volkov, your engagement data has been analyzed by our best tactical minds, General Morrison began, her voice carrying authority earned through decades of making decisions that affected millions of lives. The enemy's adaptive capability represents a paradigm shift in warfare that requires immediate response. Ghost listened as the general outlined intelligence assessments that confirmed her worst fears. The Chinese drone program had evolved beyond simple surveillance into something approaching artificial general intelligence, capable of learning from individual engagements and sharing that knowledge across global networks instantaneously. Traditional air defense systems are inadequate, continued General Morrison, activating displays that showed projected casualty estimates for conventional response scenarios. These platforms are too small for missile engagement, too numerous for fighter intercept, and too intelligent for electronic warfare countermeasures. The mathematics of modern warfare were being rewritten by an enemy that treated individual platforms as neurons in a larger intelligence network. Each destroyed drone provided data that made the next wave more effective, creating a learning curve that favored the side with unlimited expendable assets. "Ma'am, what's the strategic response?" Ghost asked, understanding that her question would determine whether humanity fought the future with courage or surrendered to technological inevitability. General Morrison's answer carried the weight of civilizational decision. Project Prometheus has been authorized. You'll be developing human-machine interface protocols that allow individual operators to process and respond to threats at machine speed. The words hung in the air like smoke from a discharged weapon. Ghost understood immediately that she was being offered transformation that would fundamentally alter what it meant to be human, trading biological limitations for capabilities that might match artificial intelligence. Colonel Reeves slid a folder across the table, its contents representing research that pushed the boundaries of neuroscience, weapons technology, and human performance enhancement. "The technology exists," she explained quietly. "Neural implants that process targeting data, reflexes enhanced through controlled stimulation, sensory augmentation that allows real-time threat assessment." Ghost opened the folder slowly, finding medical procedures that would transform her from exceptional human operator into something approaching biological weapons system. The choice before her was stark: accept enhancement that might preserve human military relevance, or watch as artificial intelligence rendered human capability obsolete. "What's the timeline for implementation?" she asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was being proposed. "Immediate," came the response that would determine humanity's future in warfare. The medical facility existed in a space between official acknowledgement and classified research, its location marked only by coordinates that changed depending on who requested access. Ghost arrived at 600 hours, her personal effects reduced to what could fit in a single duffel bag, understanding that she was crossing a threshold between human limitation and technological transcendence. Dr. Sarah Chen, the neurosurgeon whose work existed at the intersection of medicine and weapons development, greeted Ghost with the professional warmth of someone accustomed to transforming human capability. Her laboratory represented decades of research that pushed the boundaries of what military enhancement could achieve while maintaining the essential humanity that made soldiers more than weapons. "Commander, what you're considering is irreversible," Dr. Chen explained, activating displays that showed the neural interface technology with clinical precision. "The implants will fundamentally alter how your brain processes sensory information, reaction timing, and tactical assessment. You'll be enhanced, but you'll also be changed." Ghost studied the medical imagery, understanding that she was viewing her own transformation from exceptional human operator into something unprecedented in military history. The technology promised reaction times measured in milliseconds, target acquisition that operated faster than conscious thought, and sensory processing that could track multiple threats simultaneously. "What are the risks?" Ghost asked, though she suspected that volunteering for experimental military technology carried dangers that medical science couldn't fully predict. Dr. Chen's response was honest in its uncertainty. "We don't know. You'd be the first human to receive the complete enhancement package. Previous subjects have shown improved performance, but the long-term effects on personality, memory, and basic humanity remain unknown." The choice before Ghost was stark. Accept transformation that might preserve human military relevance against artificial intelligence, or maintain her essential humanity while watching technological superiority render human capability obsolete. The decision carried implications that extended far beyond individual survival to the future of human warfare itself. Santos appeared in the laboratory entrance, her expression reflecting the same choice that faced every member of their team. "Ma'am, we've all volunteered for the enhancement program. Whatever you decide, we're with you." The loyalty implicit in those words carried weight that transcended military obligation. Ghost's team was offering to sacrifice their essential humanity based on her leadership, trusting her judgment in decisions that would affect them for whatever remained of their lives. "Dr. Chen, what's the recovery timeline?" Ghost asked, understanding that their mission couldn't wait for extended rehabilitation. 72 hours for basic integration, 2 weeks for full capability," came the response that established the timeline for humanity's last stand against artificial intelligence supremacy. Ghost looked around the laboratory, seeing equipment that would transform her from human soldier into something approaching biological weapons system. The choice before her was simple in its complexity: evolution or obsolescence. "Doctor, I'm ready to proceed," she said quietly, stepping toward a future that would determine whether humans could compete with machines, or whether warfare itself would become the exclusive domain of artificial intelligence. The procedure began at 800 hours with precision that reflected years of theoretical preparation and technological development. Ghost lay on the surgical table, her head secured in a framework that allowed nanometric precision, while Dr. Chen's team prepared to install technology that would fundamentally alter human capability. The neural interface consisted of 3 primary components: a sensory processing enhancement that would allow real-time threat assessment, a motor control accelerator that would reduce reaction time to mechanical levels, and a tactical analysis matrix that would process multiple variables simultaneously. Together, they represented humanity's attempt to compete with artificial intelligence on artificial intelligence's terms. "Beginning neural pathway mapping," Dr. Chen announced, her voice carrying the professional calm of someone performing surgery at the intersection of medicine and military necessity. Specialized scanners mapped Ghost's brain activity,